Hello and welcome to the MovieKing Podcast. My name is David Jurmann and I'll be your host. On today's episode, I'm going to review the film Scream 7. So, Scream has kind of been through a lot. This movie has been through a ton of drama and controversy. The directors of Scream 5 and 6 couldn't return because of scheduling conflicts with their film Abigail that came out, I think 2 years ago now, and I enjoyed that film for what it was. I mean, it was a fun little movie. But then for Scream, they hired a new director, Christopher Landon, in their place, and I really like him. He did Happy Death Day 1 and 2, and then this movie called Freaky, which was fun. A couple other movies that weren't great, but overall I like his track record, and he did the movie Drop that just came out last year, and that was a really solid film. But anyway, a few years ago, the lead actress from Scream 5 and 6, Melissa Barrera, made some comments online regarding the current situation with Israel and Gaza, which led to her being let go from the film. This didn't go over well, obviously. There was a lot of controversy. Her co-star, Jenna Ortega, then left the film. The director, Christopher Landon, left the film. A lot of fans were boycotting and getting all mad about it. And Paramount then hired franchise veteran writer Kevin Williamson to rewrite the script for $500,000, and he'd then go on to direct Scream 7 as well, which is kind of interesting because he only directed one movie before. It kind of reminds me of the movie X-Men Dark Phoenix, where they kind of had, like, the director of the last bunch of movies was kind of problematic, they found out. So they had to hire the writer of the movie, who never really directed anything before, and they made him direct this huge blockbuster, and that movie's history. I mean, we all know how that turned out, which wasn't great. And I think that's typically the case when you have someone who never really directed something make this huge movie. Thankfully, this is Scream. It's not like this massive blockbuster, but it's still a very big franchise that a lot of people love. And especially when you have all this baggage surrounding the film, I'm sure it's a little bit overwhelming as a filmmaker. But anyway, long story short, after all this craziness, you had a big passionate group of people online threatening to boycott the movie. Reviews were the worst in the franchise for Scream 7, but it also, at the same time had the biggest opening weekend financially of the whole franchise, so that very much contradicted itself. But anyway, a few days ago, I went to check it out, and as a fan of most other Scream movies, really everyone besides the third film, I think the first film is like an all-time best horror movie. The rest are good, but yeah, really overall I'm a big Scream fan. So what did I think of Scream 7? It's not good. To this movie's credit, it had a lot going against it with how much changed so quickly, around the whole production, and it basically abandons the whole story set up in Scream 5 and 6, which I certainly found it a bit frustrating because when you're kind of getting invested in this sort of like mini trilogy of films, Scream 1 through 3 is kind of like a little trilogy. I think Scream, 5, 6, and 7 were supposed to be like a little one. It's kind of jarring to just completely switch it up like that, but the movie did also have a lot going for it because they brought back Neve Campbell, the lead of the original Scream movies, and a big supporting character in Scream 5 as well. And she was, big in Scream 4. She infamously didn't return for Scream 6 because the producers offered her less money than she thought she was worth, and fair enough. She decided not to come back. And then after firing Melissa Barrera, they were desperate enough to get her back for this 7th film, and I think that alone says all you need to know about the people involved with these movies, that, they just won't offer the lead star of, like, this whole franchise enough money to come back for a 6th film. Then they fire the person who's been leading the last 2 movies, and now they're like suddenly like, oh, we'll give you all the money you wanted before, remember? Like, we'll give you all this money now if you could just come back for us because we need the money. And it's just really greedy. I think the whole thing with this franchise was handled very poorly, and the whole thing screams of desperation to me, of like, they just really kind of, it's like that Thanos thing where it's like, and where did that bring you? Back to me. That's what this feels like. But the story of this film brings back the character Sydney after she moved away, and we're focusing on her and her teenage daughter, and I actually think one thing the movie does really well is addressing her absence in the last movie. They could have totally just thrown it away and made it like a one line excuse of like, oh, I was busy with something, but it's like, no, the movie actually, like, makes her absence in the last movie feel very important. Like, she's catching up with characters in this one. Even some parts in the third act, like, really address the fact that she wasn't in the last one, and, like, her idea and, like, what she was probably thinking as a character. And, like, there are good ideas there that I think really could have been strong in a very good movie, really could have elevated it and made it really interesting of, like, why she wasn't in the last one. And typically when a character just, isn't in one movie and then shows up in the next one, like, it's very, throwaway. But this movie really does take the time to explore that, and I appreciated that. I think that was really interesting. But I do think this movie had a lot of opportunities to explore her character a bit more. We've seen a lot of her character in the past, but especially with this new stage in life with, her having a daughter, I think you could have really done a lot to just kind of like look inside her psyche, see a different side of her that we haven't seen yet. But there's just not a whole lot done in that regard. You have this very basic character arc of Sydney being secretive about her past, with her daughter, and not wanting to talk about it, just kind of being very in denial of everything, and not really being good at communicating. And if anything, it makes it a little frustrating because we're like, why wouldn't you tell your daughter about some of this stuff? Like, why wouldn't you want her to know so she can then, be more prepared for something like this? I mean, it's kind of the opposite of what we saw with, the recent Halloween movies where it's like Jamie Lee Curtis's character is like completely psycho and, it's like bordering the whole house down and everything. And this just feels kind of like a weird parallel to that where it's like, not a parallel, but like the opposite, where it's just kind of like, nah, I'm just not really going to talk about it at all. I'm just not really going to think about it. But she is still kind of also prepared. I don't want to get into too much detail for spoiler reasons, but I just thought they could have done a lot more with that idea. Her daughter, played by Isabel May, does a fine job here. She doesn't really have that much to work with because for most of the movie, she's just kind of annoyed and scared without much else going on. And I think you also could have written her character to be a lot more interesting than she is, especially because, I would kind of see her as, if we're not bringing Melissa Barrera back, you could kind of look at the daughter character as the new lead of this franchise, and that's maybe the direction they're going in, is like slowly giving her, the lead role. I don't think she has, Isabel May have what it takes as an actor to take it, but I just don't think the character is interesting enough right now to do that. The side characters in this movie are largely nothing special. I didn't really care about anyone here. It was nice to have the siblings from the last couple movies return, but it did feel kind of weird having them without the others. Like, it's just kind of, they don't really mention them, so I don't know. It's just a little weird. Like, we're still acknowledging the last two movies, like they exist, but we're not following them up in any meaningful way. So it's like, why even watch them really? I don't know. The whole thing's very bizarre. My main issue with this movie, though, is that you can definitely tell how rushed the whole thing is. You can tell Kevin Williamson didn't have enough time to write the script, so it essentially just feels like a first or second draft. Like, it feels like he needed a few more rewrites to get this thing where he would normally have it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it is where he had it, maybe it's just not very fresh to him anymore, maybe he just, like, is kind of over this franchise, I'm not really sure. Or he just didn't have enough time to come up with a great idea. He's a good writer, so I know he has the talent to do it. And from what I've heard, Scream 2 in particular was very rushed along, and he did that while also, like, doing other stuff. So I know he has what it takes, but there are just so many contrivances and stupid decisions made in this movie that make no sense at all. Like, you take one step back and think about half the stuff that happens in this movie, it just makes no sense. And Williamson also doesn't show a lot of experience here as a director. You can tell this is very much like only the second thing he's made. There's not much of a style here, and also not much tension either. Part of that is due to the writing, but I can't say that any sequence in particular was very memorable or a standout. I mean, you have this one scene where, like, characters are moving through, like, a wall, and Ghostface is, like, putting a knife through it. Like, that was in the trailers. That was a pretty good scene. Maybe another one at, like, this theater where characters, on the wires, and that was alright, but nothing about it was really great because of the direction, or, they weren't very innovative. Like, it was just kind of like, okay, these are fine sequences. Like, I'm not really gonna think about these much afterwards. And even the opening scene was kind of boring. The whole scene just felt incredibly drawn out, and you could 100% just cut it from the movie without losing anything. I think you could argue that for some of the other Scream movies too, but at least they're so good, like, you wouldn't want to remove them. Like, they're almost like these mini short films. In this case, it was just a really kind of dull opening scene. I mean, it has a few moments that were cool, but it wasn't really getting me hyped for the rest of the film. Even the jump scares in this movie are kind of pathetic. I can't even recall, how many instances there are of literally one of my least favorite horror tropes. Like the fake jump scare where the movie tries to make you think like there's an actual threat coming, but then it's just a joke of like, oh, I was just trying to scare you. And like this movie does it so many times in a row that you're just thinking like these characters have no common sense of like how other people feel. Like it's very clearly annoying the other person and they're not comfortable, so why would you keep doing it? And it just feels very cheap to the audience too, of like, you're just insulting my intelligence right now. Like, you're not even actually giving me a real scare. You're just giving me these cheap gags, and it gets very annoying. And I don't know why Kevin Williamson did that, because these movies avoid those tropes so much. Like, this franchise in general is known to avoid horror tropes, but I don't know why this movie leans into them as much as it does. Like, it's not clever in that way. And that's, again, what kind of leads me to think, like, either the script was just really rushed along, or it was very phoned in and just not really cared about very much. I also saw some people online saying that this movie feels like a Stab movie, not a Scream movie, and I do kind of agree with that. For those of you who don't know, Stab is the in-universe horror franchise based on the events in the other movies, and I just don't really know what happened here. Like, it feels very phoned in by everyone. I mean, I love Neve Campbell, but even she doesn't seem that invested in the whole thing. Like, she's there, but maybe just there for the paycheck. I'm not really sure. I am sure she still cares about these characters, but I don't know. It just doesn't feel like anyone making this movie was really passionate about it. It doesn't feel like this was a movie where, like, yes, this is the Scream movie we need to tell. Like, it just feels instead more like, all right, we need to make some quick money. Let's just throw this together and make this story now because we can't tell the one we originally wanted to tell. Maybe with a better script, this could have been a good movie, but it has so many problems inside and out that the more I think about it, the worse it gets. My immediate reaction was literally that this feels like The Rise of Skywalker, in that it's trying to appeal to fans of the franchise so much that it actually kind of comes across as offensive and desperate to them. Like, just throwing out fan service, throwing out nostalgia. It's just dangling keys in your face to make you be like, "Oh, look how exciting this is. We're giving you everything you wanted, right?" And it's not. It's not that good. It's just really not good. The Scream movies are kind of known to comment on a lot of what's going on in the world at the time, particularly in the horror genre. But even that doesn't feel very fresh or innovative here. Not sure if it's because they just kind of got it all out of their system, or because maybe there's just not enough time between movies to really like have new topics. I mean, this movie comments a little bit, I guess, on the whole nostalgia thing. Like, it is self-aware about the fact that it's very heavy on nostalgia, but I think this is one of those cases where it's like, just because you acknowledge you're doing something doesn't mean it's clever. I think sometimes like that can really work, and it feels self-aware and it feels very fun. But in this case, it's like, it's like, oh, we're just kind of leaning into all these bad tropes you don't like, but we're saying we're doing it, so that makes it okay. And I'm like, it's not really clever in any way. Like, this isn't thought-provoking or, even well done. It's just kind of like, I don't know, the whole thing just feels very desperate. And I'm really not even getting into some of the spoilers of like what they did, but just some of the kind of the characters they brought back and things they did towards the end of the movie just really screamed like, please just kind of accept the nostalgia. Like, look how cool this is, what we're doing. And it didn't work for me. And then another thing is that the reveal of who the killer is was very disappointing and unsatisfying to me. I won't lie, it has a couple of funny moments, but I'm not sure if that was like genuine or just from how ridiculous it was. The motivation is like really stupid. Uh, it's just, I mean, you wouldn't even believe me if I told you what it was. It's just really, it's like so, like, why would you think of that? Like, it's so random. Um, I don't know. It's very frustrating to think about. Um, but look, this movie, I know I'm saying a lot of awful things about this film, but I didn't actually like hate it. It's definitely watchable and has some entertainment value here and there. A few of the kills are good, and there are a couple of clever sequences that I have to give credit for. But I also just found that I had, but I also just found that I had to suspend so much disbelief throughout the movie, and I was questioning so much of what happened. And because of that, I'm sure there will be people who dislike this movie more than me. But if it weren't for Neve Campbell, I'd probably be less forgiving of certain things that this movie does. And as it is, it's pretty bad, but it's nothing offensive to me that like I couldn't take. It's not like a franchise killer. It's just a bad entry in an otherwise very good franchise. Not quite as bad as Scream 3 is to me. Like that to me still is bottom of the barrel for this franchise, but I do know some other people like this even less than Scream 3, so take that as you will. But yeah, as a Scream fan, I have to say that I was very disappointed. So I'm going to rate Scream 7 a C-. And that about does it for this episode. If you want to follow my reviews, you can find me on Letterboxd at MovieKing1224. You can also listen to this podcast on your favorite apps such as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. If you have any comments or feedback, I would love to hear it and improve the show. And of course, if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to hear more like it. I appreciate you all so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.